we try and do every week, try and put up as many points as possible, and like I said, take care of the ball. But, two good teams, you got to go out there and play your best is what it comes down to.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
I had a weird afternoon today. Not to complain about my personal life. It's not really that personal. It's just the day-to-day. I've had a weird day. I dropped my car off for an oil change this morning and had the courtesy driver bring me to work. There is no one on earth. I will plant my flag on this. I had a listener ask me in the Monday mailbag, Grant, if you had to do something other than radio, what would you do? I said, I don't know. I have very, very few skills. One of my skills, I am top percentile in the world in this. Chatting up the courtesy driver who drops you off at work after you drop your car off. I am unbelievable at it. There's no one better at that very odd thing than me. Dropped off to work, did Bill's show, and then went back to get my car. No additional charges. It costed the exact amount that we thought it would, which is always great. And I had a coworker take me about 10 minutes. I said, hey, I'll buy you lunch. Like, could you take me back? He's done it before. Very nice. RJ on the morning show. He obliged. I don't know what's going on in Madison. Is something on fire on the northwest side? It's smoky everywhere. And also, it was so bright, and I have my sunglasses, and I still feel like my eyes are burning, and I'm sweaty. And then I got a chicken sandwich from McDonald's, and I was trying to eat it while posting Bill's podcast, and I spilled some of the sauce on my shirt. So I don't know. I just feel all betwixt and between. Luckily, Packers-Texans is as juicy as any game we could ever preview on a Friday show. So I think the show will be just fine. I might be a little out of sorts today, so apologies ahead of time. Tony from Texas, by the way, DM'd me after the show last night. He said, great, you look like a gas station attendant at 2 a.m. by the end of the show. I don't know, was that commentary on my hair? Thank you, Tony, I guess. Just limping to the finish line this week. Jesus. It's the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. I hope you're having a great Friday. You never miss a Friday show. It's just something we don't do. I kind of did it last week. I took Friday off, so technically there was no Friday show. It's a technicality, but that's how I find a loophole there. I want to take your calls tonight as we get ready for Packers-Texans. This is a huge game for so many reasons, and I spent my time throughout the day preparing for the show, trying to line up all the different reasons why this game is important. And there's a lot of reasons, right? There's big picture reasons. There's perceptual reasons. There's here and now reasons, like the NFC North is great. Packers got to keep pace. There is a laundry list of reasons this game on Sunday is huge. And, of course, it's the game where they debut their winter warning jerseys presented by American Family Insurance, of course. So we talked a little bit about that last night, but there is a laundry list of reasons this game is really important. So that's the meat and potatoes that I'm bringing to the next 2 hours. We're going to go through all the different ways in which this game is important, try to establish the stakes of Sunday. This is a big game. It should feel big. It's going to be at noon, but I still think it'll feel like a big game. So I want to take your calls. You can add to the reasons why this game is important. And if you have a gut feeling either way or a player or a position to watch, we can hash that out. Typical Friday preview stuff. At 5:30, one of my favorite guests to have on the show. The only problem with this guest is that I have so few opportunities to have him on. His name is Cody Stoots. He did an appearance with us when I was filling in on the WK2R morning show with Hunter Baumgart, who now does radio in Milwaukee. I don't know, 2016, 2017, 2018. I don't remember. They played the Texans, and Hunter sent this guy a DM, and he was awesome and stayed in very distant touch ever since. Anytime there's a Texan story, anytime the Packers play the Texans, Cody is always willing to come on. His name is Cody Stoots. He's covered the Texans for over 10 years through multiple platforms. Now he does his own thing. It's just Houston football. If you find him on Twitter or look up his YouTube page, there's lots of coverage. Anything you could want to know about the Texans and individual players and what's been going on in practice this week, the coverage is online. And, of course, he's going to join us at 5:30. Very excited to have him on. 608-321-1670. Text and call. The live stream is up and running on YouTube and on Facebook. You can like those pages, the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills, and streaming on Twitter, of course. You can find me at Wisco Grant. We can start for a couple minutes with last night. I was entertained by Thursday Night Football last night. The game stunk. And I think both of those teams mostly stink. I don't think Bo Nix is. I don't think he's all that good right now. For a guy who played so many games in college, I would want him to look a little bit more comfortable in the pocket. quick to bail, and he can get out and run, but I thought he was a little bit better at throwing on the run. He airmailed a couple guys last night. The thing is, the infrastructure in Denver that's been established, even early on in Sean Payton's tenure, is just so much better than, say, the infrastructure around Drake May, around some other rookie quarterbacks that are pressed into service right away. And the Saints are just a nightmare. And the game was a clunker. It stunk. And I know it was Drew Brees' night, and he was honored at halftime. I just don't know that many football fans nationally really care about Drew Brees and the Saints brand. It's kind of a weak brand. The stadium is kind of ugly. It was on Amazon. I just don't know that mattered to a whole lot of people. I don't know that a whole lot of people were sitting around last night watching. Well, the game stinks, but I mean, it's Drew Brees' homecoming. No one, I don't think that many people cared. And I saw a lot of football people on Twitter, the people that I follow, the writers, the journalists, the film guru, the football blogosphere. Everyone's tweeting like, "Hey man, you got to be a sicko to watch this game." I'm like, there's football on. I'm going to watch it. Bad football is still football, and we have such a limited amount of football every year. It's already week 7. Season's flying by, as it always does. It always goes so quickly. Also, games like last night remind us how hard it is to be great in this league and to win in this league. The Saints have some good talent. There's talent on the Saints roster. Compare the Saints with the Patriots. The Patriots got nobody. They got a running back that's pretty solid. Got some special teamer. Like Christian Gonzalez is nice. But there are bad teams with way less talent than the Saints. The Saints have some good talent and an offensive coordinator that everyone was ready to crown 3 weeks ago, Clint Kubiak. But half of their roster is injured, and it seems the remaining players kind of quit on Dennis Allen last night. I'm not sure it's a great head coach. And their cap sheet is an absolute mess. Just the accounting of that team and the way that they've handled payrolls, and it's just a mess. And they feel so far away from winning. So last night is a good bit of perspective. It's like, hey, count your blessings if you're a fan of the Lions, the Packers, the Vikings, or even the Bears right now, who are, I think, still building it up, but leagues ahead, miles ahead of where a team like the Saints is. I think the Broncos as well. The Broncos really didn't do much for me. The Broncos, you know what the Broncos did well last night? Not be the Saints. That's what that game was about last night. And I know Southside Scott called in last night and said, hey, my Broncos playing tonight. And I think the pick that I gave was I think the Broncos will win 20-15, 18-15, something kind of gross like that. Well, I was right about the Saints part of it. The Broncos were able to put up more points, kind of in part because I think the Saints defense quit a little bit. And having to watch what I saw from Spencer Rattler, I'm not necessarily going to blame him. The football was great last night. Well, I shouldn't say it was great. It was on. The baseball was great. The baseball was awesome and cool for Cleveland. It's hard for me to watch that as a Brewers fan and not be a little jaded because, I see the sports world today celebrating the voice of the Guardians and Cleveland deserved that moment. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, they probably do. But when is my team going to get that moment? When is my team going to get to win a playoff round? The Brewers deserve it. Cleveland was in the World Series less than 10 years ago. What do you mean Cleveland deserves it? My team deserves it. Bob Uecker deserves it. Brewers fans deserve it. So I'm glad that series has been extended just even a little bit. I guess I'm cheering for the Dodgers. I guess. I just don't see if Mookie Betts remembers how to play baseball, and he didn't really earlier on in the playoffs to start that series against the Padres. If Mookie Betts is playing like himself and Ohtani's hitting bombs, I don't really see how the Mets are beating that team. Sucks. Hey, almost looked for a second there like Jesse Winker was going to hit a grand slam to tie it up. That's too bad. I was pulling for the guy to do it too. So a little bit of a recap of what happened last night. I wanted to start our Packers-Texans conversation with a point that Ryan Wood made on the show last night. And if you missed Ryan at 5 o'clock, I would certainly say, even though the conversation has aged by a day, certainly worth listening to and going back and finding either in the podcast or checking out the live stream from yesterday. Ryan Wood is just so good. USA Today, that network, and Packers News. He made this point last night, which is something that I really hadn't considered. And I think this is one of many reasons on a long list of reasons why Sunday's game is really, really important for the Packers. Here's Ryan Wood from last night.
I think this is just such a pivotal game for the Packers because here they are at 4-2. And for a year and a half now, right, even all last year, they didn't really have much separation in the win-loss column, right? They kind of just floated. Last year was a lot of catch up, trying to get back to 500, and then trying to get yourselves in the playoffs. They haven't. They're 4-2 now. They're 5-2 if they win this game. They go down to Jacksonville after this. That looks like 6-2 because the Jaguars are awful. They're just a terrible football team. You start to build that momentum, but you got to win this game because the difference between 5-2 going to Jacksonville and 4-3, it's pretty significant. So getting this win, to me, it's just so pivotal in this early part of the season.
It's not something that I thought about. I went back and I looked at the schedule from last year. Started 1-0 against the Bears. I'm not going to rehash the entire schedule for you, but just to remember kind of what happened last year. They started 1-0, went to 1-1, went to 2-1 against the Saints, went to 2-2 against the Lions. And then they lost a bunch of games and they bottomed out at 3-6 on Sunday, November 12th against the Steelers. They then won 3 in a row, Chargers, Lions on Thanksgiving, and then the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. And by beating the Chiefs, they were back at 6-6. And we started looking ahead at the schedule. Said, well, Giants, Tommy DeVito, that's winnable. Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield, solid team, but that's a Green Bay. The Packers are hot. That's a game that they should win. Carolina, that's a game that they should win. We started thinking the Packers are going to be 9-6. And that's not revisionist history. I can go back and find you podcast clips where everyone's going, hey, don't look now, but the Packers are going to go to 6-6 or 9-6, excuse me. They're a playoff team. And then they lost to the Giants. They lost to the Bucs. And then they had to dig themselves back to 8-8 on New Year's Eve against the Vikings and then end their season at 9-8 against the Bears. Ryan is right. They put themselves in a hole early, fought to climb out, and then they lost a couple. They had to dig back again and win some more games. Last year, they never reached, let's say, cruising altitude. They never got to a point where it's like, all right, the season, we're cruising. We've reached a certain record. We've reached a certain cushion in the win column where the season kind of feels we're on cruise control, right? The Packers at 4-2 right now, to Ryan's point, if they're able to win on Sunday, go to 6-2, they have an opportunity to go to Jacksonville to play a team that will be coming back from London. That team looks like it's quit on Doug Peterson. They could go to, what would that be? 6-2? That's cruising. That's cruising altitude. That's cruise control. You're 6-2. And now you feel a little bit better about playing Detroit and then the bye week following it up, going to Chicago. You feel like you kind of got your arms around the season. You've reached cruising altitude. And I think the plane is a good analogy because what happens when you reach cruising altitude on a plane? The fasten your seatbelt sign goes off. You're free to move about the cabin, right? Food and beverage service resumes, right? There's just, you can take a sigh of relief and you can kind of go about your business. If the Packers win this Sunday, they will set themselves up beautifully to go about their business like you do on a plane. Whereas if they lose this game, they go back to 4-3. It's like, that's not cruising altitude. Man, we got our seatbelts on and we're dealing with some turbulence. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Set the opponent aside. And the opponent is, motivation enough to win this game. An AFC contender, a contemporary of Jordan Love, a quarterback that he's probably going to be compared to for, the time being until the status quo changes with either. If the Packers win, to Ryanwood's point on Sunday, they set themselves up to move about the cabin like you would on an airplane. And that's independent of opponent, right? If we get into the opponent, like I just said, we can come up with 3 or 4 or 5 more bullet points on why this game is important. But just from the place they are in their season, the record they currently have, the opportunity that they have to better their record against the Jaguars a week from Sunday, significant. It's a significant opportunity to put themselves in a great spot after being in a pretty tough spot early on. 0-1, quarterback's hurt, right? And then you fight back to 2-2, but then you lose that game you get my point, right? They will be free to move about the cabin for a couple weeks, like you do on an airplane when you reach cruising altitude. Let's take a call, then we'll take a break. 608-321-1670. I would bet dollars to donuts I know who this is. Wisco Sports Show. Who is this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric, I would have been the last bet that I would have made. I thought we were getting a Denny from Holman leadoff appearance here. What's going on, Eric?
Just our charge. I'm going to go get my oil changed.
Really? Look at us.
Yep.
Look at us. And you're
Right.
a commuter. You get your oil change more common than the average bear. The sticker on my windshield says, the mileage total, or I don't remember what. It was something in January, February, March. It's like not a chance I'm making it until then before I need an oil change.
Right. So it's it's a beautiful Friday. Never miss a Friday show.
Thank you.
I don't know if you should use
What was that? You're cutting out. Say that one more time. Shouldn't use what?
I don't know if you should use airplane, right?
Is this a McManus joke? You're cutting out a little bit, Eric. Your connection stinks. I straight up lost you. Call back in a little bit, Eric. I don't know where you are out on I-90, my fellow mileage merchant. I could sense maybe a McManus joke with the airplane reference, and that is a good joke. I want you to have the opportunity to tell it, Eric. Call back when you have a little bit better reception. Let's take a break, and we'll get to your phone call. 608-321-1670. Eric, off to a great start on the phones. I'll get to your texts as well. More from you next. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. Happy Friday. Never miss a Friday show. Apologies to Eric on I-90, but your phone connection stinks. Couldn't make out your words, Eric. But I knew the information was going to be good, and again, I call back when your connection's a little bit better. I want all Packers fans, or in the case of Eric, Vikings fans alike, have a chance to give your thoughts before Packers-Texans. There is a long, long list of reasons why this game is really important. From a record standpoint, from a keeping up with the Joneses standpoint, I mean, just look around the NFC North, look around the NFC. Packers got to keep pace. And also, they win this game, they get some breathing room. They get, and the analogy that I'm using, an airplane analogy, you get to cruising altitude. And when you get to cruising altitude, what do? You get to move about the cabin and the food and the drink service, and you get to go to the can if you need to. And it's just, everyone can kind of, all right, now we can continue, right? The Packers have been in takeoff mode And there's been some turbulence. Like we're coming in and out of Denver and the wind out of the mountains is it rocked us around a little bit. A couple Malik Willis starts, real bad start against the Vikings, even though they course corrected. That kind of became a competitive football game by the end. Right? And now we're so close to reaching cruising altitude. If the Packers are able to beat the Texans, they go to 5-2, the date with the Jaguars next weekend. Now we're moving about the cabin. Yeah, I'll take a can of Coke. Yeah. Flat. Yeah, that's fine. No, sure. Pour it into a cup. Yeah, that way it's more likely to spill. Yeah, that'll great. It's not you have a cup holder. Sure. Yep. Serve it. I'll thank you for the napkin. If it spills on my lap, that napkin will definitely be helpful. Some peanuts, sure. Oh, they're not salted? Even better. Yeah. Cruising altitude. Again, 608-321-1670. Let's take some calls. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Tony in Texas. I was going to do an Eric from I-90 impression, but the last time I cracked on a caller about phone reception, I lost my own phone reception. So we will not go there. But hey, hopefully Eric. I was excited for an Eric call.
I think he'll circle back. The fact that he tried at 4:15 tells me that he's got lots of opportunity. Normally a 5 o'clock caller, but he's got plenty of chances.
He's got a busy schedule.
Yeah, well,
that guy.
A lot of windshield time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you're absolutely right about this Ryan Wood, what he said about the Packers. And I actually was looking at the schedule, and this is a huge game. And you and Cohn mentioned that yesterday. This game, if they win 5-2 against an elite team, Super Bowl contender, at home at Lambeau, and you go to 5-2, you got the Jaguars next. You go to 6-2 with the Lions coming into town. This absolutely, I'm not going to say it's a must-win. It's not a must-win, but this puts the Packers in another tier.
Yep.
What do you think?
That's a good way of looking at it. And in the NFL, Tony, you can make the case that every game's a must-win. You know what I mean? Like the Packers are not in a position, and they're certainly not in a division where they can afford to just fart around and lose home games. You know what I mean? This division's tough, man. Like getting into the playoffs is not as simple as, well, just kind of, meander your way through the regular season. You'll end up there eventually. No, this Packers team has got to keep up with their competition.
Well, and that's why they got rid of the kicker, right? You can make a case the kicker cost them 2 games. I'm not going to say he did, but he didn't help the cause.
Could
right?
make the case. You're exactly right when you say it that way. You can make the case.
You can make the case. Hey, lastly, I know you've seen these rumors floating around. We've mentioned Myles Garrett as a potential Packer. I mean, it's out there. It's out there. It's out there. If Gucci don't do that, it's out there. It's floating around.
No, it's not. Not unless you're floating it.
I'm not floating it. Check it out. Steve Pfeiffer even mentioned on the show today.
I know. I saw that. That's not legit. Sparky will cook stuff up like that. Let me see here. Multiple reports that the Green Bay Packers are discussing trades with the Cleveland Browns for one or both of Greg Newsome and Myles Garrett. That's from a Twitter account called Packers Up North. That's the only place it came from. Also, the Browns should not trade him, and the Packers would have to slide money all over the place to accommodate that trade. They don't have the cap space currently to accommodate Max Crosby or Myles Garrett. They could slide it around, but I don't know. Plus, I think Greg Newsome would give them more bang for their buck. They could use another corner, I think, more than they could use another pass rusher at this moment in time. They are lacking a star player along the defensive front right now, but they're deep along the defensive front. They're not deep at corner. They could use another corner. I'm sure they'd love to have Rasul Douglas back. I understood that trade at the time, but it'd be a nice player to have on this team. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
We'll try it again, Grant.
Eric, you sound so much better already.
Great. I won't do the joke. It's too easy. People expect more out of me.
No. Eric, sometimes the low-hanging fruit is delicious. Not every. You don't need to reinvent the joke with every wheel. You know what? Let's pretend like the first call didn't happen. I was just making the airplane analogy. Go ahead.
Right. I don't know if it's a good week to make airplane analogies and getting loose on the plane. All right.
See, it still hit. It still made me laugh. It's good.
Okay, but you're right about the airplane business and the trajectory of your team. Now, I didn't feel this way when we played the Texans and beat the snot out of them. I didn't feel like it was a pivotal game for us, but I don't feel like any game is pivotal because I'm always expecting it not to go so well. I'm like you. Last year I had zero expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Zero expectations. Now this week here, I kind of think Detroit might get the better of us this week. I kind of do.
Detroit's just looks so good. But also, if we're talking about, you love Eric mentioning regressing to the mean. This could also be the week where Detroit regresses a little bit to the mean. They've looked unbelievable and untouchable through the first 6 games of the year.
Right. How many turnovers does Green Bay have this year? Like 17?
So they have a pile. Here's the thing, though. They're not forcing turnovers because they're pressuring the quarterback. Like, if the Packers start pressuring the quarterback, which they basically haven't done, it's not unreasonable to believe that they can continue to force turnovers. The turnovers that they've forced so far have been they've been hard earned. They could start creating turnovers way easier than they have so far. Do you get what I'm saying there? I'm kind of tripping over my words, but
I think so too. I think the Vikings are at a high turnover rate here too. I don't know where we're at, but that's not gonna. We're not gonna have 75 turnovers this year, so those are gonna regress, right? Those are gonna regress to the mean. That's what we're doing. We're regressing to the mean.
That's all life is, Eric. We wake up, we go to work, and we regress to the mean, and one day we die. That's life.
And I want to say something about your Rich Bisaccia, your special teams coach. You got that little blurb, where they play a little interview when you're on break.
Mm-hmm.
I like what he said about the kicker. He said, he knows where he wants the ball, which I thought was fascinating because I didn't know there was that many variations.
That's what I heard too. I'm like, wait, do kickers around the league really do it differently? You snap the ball, you hold it, and you kick it. Like, well, how much variation is there kicker to kicker and team to team? That I don't know. It seems like he's trying to sell special teams as rocket science, and I'm not buying it.
Right. And then another thing I liked was he was like, he kicked today, he kicked yesterday, he kicked the day before, and he's kicking tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which I thought was good. I thought was really good.
He's running a heck of a program, that Rich Bisaccia guy is. He's got a very special program he's got this guy on. Yeah.
And if your other kicker didn't know how he wanted the ball, they should have recognized that as a problem right out of the gate.
Jesus.
That you don't know how you want the ball.
I'm glad that those comments jumped out to others too, because I was listening to Zach's update. Eric, I appreciate the call. And just listening to Rich Bisaccia's comments, I'm like, really, man? Is it that complicated? Line it up and kick it. Just have the long snapper kick the holder in the hands, put the ball down, laces out, and kick the thing through the uprights. Like, my God. Rich Bisaccia frames this crap like it's rocket science, and I know there are important little details, but not that many important little details. Make your kicks. You're killing this team. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, it's me, Uncle Packer.
Uncle Packer. Star-studded first segment here.
Oh, it's so hard to wake up and be so happy you're a Packer fan every morning. It's just amazing. I'm happy. So what now is going on? We got to play Texas, right? I think we're going to beat the Texans. I think I've been so impressed with this defense. As you see, I was watching last week, they had the human joystick out there, and we didn't let him out of the backfield. People were going to a spot. They weren't chasing him around back there. They were they were going to a spot and not letting him get ahead of him.
They were corralling him, not chasing. They were directing traffic. They weren't chasing cars.
They weren't, and that's so good. That's so good because that's where they get around you and downfield. And I think they're going to do the same thing this week. I think we're going to bring a lot of pressure. I really believe in my heart, and I'm not thinking just because I'm a Packer fan. I really think we'll be able to beat the Texans. I think that we have more options than they do.
So we've started, Uncle Packer, we've kind of started the show through the first half hour talking about this game big picture. In the here and now, right, the details of actually what's going on with the Texans this week, they're without both of their starting linebackers. They're missing some important players in the secondary. They were already susceptible to play action. The Packers do a lot of things and run their offense in a way that gives the Texans defense issues, and they should be even able to attack those areas more because they're so banged up. They're missing some important players right up the spine of their defense. I'm feeling pretty confident about the Packers too. If they're the team that we think that they are, and they're as talented and as well coached as we think they are, they should have the upper hand and a great opportunity to really play a great game on Sunday. I'm with you.
We have time to game plan for that, and I really believe in our coaches. And I think they'll come up with a game plan that will we'll shut that down and take that advantage away from them, and especially when they got some players out now. And as the scheme is, if we would lose, I think we'll still come back from that. But I would like to stay up with the NFC North, which is amazing. I mean, we're like 1, 2, 3, and 4 for a point advantage in the whole NFL. The NFC North ranks 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited to see how Detroit is going to do against Minnesota. I think I'm going to have that game on another TV because I've never been a big fan of Detroit, but I think I'm going to be tomorrow.
We have to be. Yeah.
I'd like to see how that turns out. Any thoughts about that game?
Detroit. So I want to pick Detroit. Uncle Packer, that's a good call. I picked Detroit when we did our picks on Bill's show yesterday because I think the Vikings are probably due for a letdown. I think the Lions are probably at some point due for a letdown too, though. That's the problem. Both of these teams have been so hot, and they've executed at such a high level, and they're just flying it at such a high altitude, again with the plane references, through the first 6 weeks. Both of them seem like they're due. But I also think the Lions are better than the Vikings. So if I'm going to pick for one team for 1 week to come back down to earth, I think I'm going to pick the Vikings. And you're absolutely right. Like, it's hyperbolic to say that it's a must-win. Man, this win is a big piece of the puzzle for the Packers navigating the next month of their schedule or so, which includes a game against the Jags, divisional games, one against the Lions, one against the Bears. You got a bye week in there as well. This is an important game. They're all important games just from a keeping up with the Jones standpoint. We're so busy keeping up with the Jones. 4-car garage. We're still building on. They're trading. These teams are adding. It's a song lyric for those who might know that song and get that reference. By the way, to Eric's point about turnovers and how it might be a little fluky. He doesn't expect the Vikings to continue to get turnovers at that clip. We shouldn't expect as Packers fans, what do they have, 15, 16, 17 turnovers? We shouldn't expect that to continue. The weird thing is the Packers have forced a ton of turnovers without really getting much pressure on the quarterback. That doesn't compute. Normally you force pressures, you force the quarterback to make bad decisions, and that's when the turnovers happen. Strip sacks, fumbles, interceptions. Hasn't really been the case. Jeff Hafley, and I want to play this for you before we take our break, spoke in his presser this week about how often they talk about turnovers, the ways in which they talk about turnovers, a little peek behind the curtain into how this defense is being coordinated and taught and talked about on a week-by-week basis. Here's Jeff Hafley.
I think what's always been really important to me philosophically is taking the ball away. And I don't think it happens by accident or by any luck. You got to talk about it. You got to be about it. And you have to go out and practice it. And then it's going to show up in games. And then once they believe in it, it's going to show up more and more. So when you get in front of the whole team and you constantly are talking about it each week and you're showing the team that it's not just talk. It's not like hearsay, like, hey, we're going to attack the ball and be good at taking away the ball. We've dedicated a whole meeting to it. When I was in San Francisco with the Niners, Kyle had me do that meeting every Thursday for 2 years. So it's something that I took a lot of pride in. It's something that I put a lot of time into, and I wanted to give a powerful message each week. Sometimes it got hard after a long season when you're just talking about the ball. But I think in those 2 years, I've learned the importance of the ball. But I do think it is really important. I think our staff is taking great ownership in those meetings. And you also talk to the offensive players. It's not just talking about taking the ball away. It's showing the offensive players, these guys aren't holding it well. We can't look like that. Or there's times when we'll put up in front of the group, if I'm the Texans, I'm coming after you. Here's why. And we'll show 3 clips of our guys not holding the ball well. Like, you're our targeted guys. We're going to get you.
So turnovers are fluky to a degree, right? You can't simply expect turnovers because you're well coached or because it's something that you preach. You need the other team to throw you the ball, or you need the other team to put the ball on the ground. But it sounds like Jeff Hafley and his defense, Mike Clemens made sure we heard that cut on Bill's show earlier today too. It sounds like this defense is emphasizing finding ways to force turnovers in lots of different ways. And I understand why Jeff Hafley was an attractive coaching candidate and why players seem to be responding to him early, even though he's just starting to install his system, to Vagabond John's point from earlier this week. I just kind of like his messaging. I like what he has to say. Press conferences don't win games, but also this defense is a lot better than a lot of their counting stats would say. Yards, touchdowns, passing yards, yards per carry, yards per game, all those sorts of things. all the advanced numbers have this as a top 10 defense. I think if the pressure starts showing up against the quarterback this week, against really their third really talented opponent, the first two being the Eagles and the Vikings, I think we could be in for the defense's first dominant performance against a worthwhile opponent this year. And that's something that I was kind of hinting at a little bit to start yesterday's show. Let's take a break, couple minutes, more of your thoughts. I also want to talk specifically about what the Packers can do offensively to take advantage of some weaknesses of the Houston Texans, including a couple of those injuries that we just mentioned. We'll do that next. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
This Houston defense is very good. I weirdly think, though, the type of offense Green Bay matches up well with them in a couple of ways. They don't have a number one wide receiver. I think this is one of those matchups where that works in your favor because you can go hunting, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of being like, we got to force feed whoever Derek Stingley Jr. is on. Not the case at all with Green Bay. Every week it's a different guy. The Texans defense is amazing in everything, but they still suck against play action. 30th in EPA per play. I think Matt LaFleur pretty relentlessly goes after them. I expect a lot of play action pass in this one. I think there's like a clear approach for the Green Bay offense.
It's Mina Kimes. Her preview she does with Ben Solak. I didn't include Ben's part. Ben's part was also very good. Clip that I saw on Twitter. And I see people pointing out the Texans can be had on play action. They're 30th in EPA per play. And this weekend, that's going to continue to be a challenge for them, you would assume, because they're without both of those starting linebackers up the middle and some players along the front. That pass rush and that defensive line remains excellent, right? Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, that's about as good of a tandem as you'll find. The question is, can Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, and others along that Packers offensive line who have been very good in pass protection in their own right, some of the best in football, that's a strength on a strength. The Packers pass protection versus the Houston Texans pass rush. Strength versus strength. If those two things can neutralize each other most of the time, if that's a toss-up most of the time, the Packers are going to have opportunities to push the ball down the field, especially if Jordan Love's knee is at a point where he can line up on our center, which is something that hasn't really been addressed that I've heard in press conferences with Matt LaFleur, with Jordan Love, since Pete Bukowski asked him about it after the Rams game. I don't really know where that story went. If Jordan Love can line up under center, and they can run the ball. Tucker Kraft said in his media availability earlier this week, and we heard this last night, I thought it was smart, right? You want every play to look like a running play. If the Packers can do that effectively and their offensive line can pass protect well enough against Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, it's going to be opportunities. Doesn't mean the Packers will be able to take advantage of it. You know, maybe Jordan Love misses throws, or maybe wide receivers drop passes, or they get killed by penalties. I'm just saying, looking at the X's and O's and the personnel and how that personnel has fared throughout the season, the Packers should have opportunities, and I think the Texans will have opportunities too. This is going to be a really balanced, fun, back-and-forth game. I'm just trying to illustrate, the avenue that the Packers might try to take, or the avenue that they should try to take. Just cram a bunch of play action down their throat, and that means deep crossers with Christian Watson, and you don't need to be able to run the ball to establish and to set up play action. It certainly helps, and I wonder what kind of day Josh Jacobs is fixing to have on Sunday too. We'll get more from the Texans part of it. Cody Stoots, Houston football friend of shows, joined it a couple times throughout the years. He's going to join us in about 45 minutes now, and we'll get some more specifics on the health of the Texans and what we should know, what they're good at, what they're not so good at. Let's take another call. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant Bills, how we doing on a beautiful Wisconsin Friday afternoon?
Vagabond John, I'm excellent. Are you in Madison or are you traveling?
I just drove right down Willie Street, and it's in the golden hour, and all the shops are open, and you have the trees all turned beautiful colors.
I do love that.
The people are bustling, and man, a drive down Willie Street at 4:45 on a Friday at this time of year, beautiful.
Does anyone know why is it so smoky in Madison? What's going on? I went outside this afternoon and it was hazy, but it wasn't hazy like, oh, there's a wildfire a couple states away. Like something in the immediate area is burning. Is it still noticeable?
That might be a West Side thing. I don't know. Let me. Okay, I'm by the lake.
By the way, you're talking about Madison like it's 30 miles wide. It was on the west side. It was on the northwest side, but still.
It is a west. It is a wide city. Yeah, I'm looking across Lake Monona right now. There does appear, live report from the boots on the ground, there does appear to be a little bit of haze across the lake. So I don't know what that is, but it kind of adds to the sun. Kind of adds to the golden hour effect. I'm okay with it for now.
I'll check the Madison subreddit. What is your football take? What have you called to discuss?
Yeah, I got to disagree with you on kind of your opening metaphor, and I love a Grant Bills opening metaphor in the John Nolan tunnel. So I don't know if I'm still coming through clear.
You're coming through.
A Grant Bills opening metaphor. You do a lot of work on it. I think it's the part of today. I got to disagree. I don't think there is any part of this plane ride, any part of this flight that is going to have zero turbulence. I still think in any NFL season, and I don't want to make this like a gotcha moment or a well, but actually moment. But what I will say is I do think that was the problem that we saw under Mike McCarthy, under Aaron Rodgers, is I think we saw really good teams relax a little bit too often.
Okay.
When they got 8-2, when they got to a 7-3 record. And for this team right now and how specifically the skill positions are fighting, they're all fighting for their second contract. I think there's an intensity with the awesome combination of youth, at the skill positions, experience from a lot of the free agents that are coming in, and a little bit of urgency when you're thinking about the coaching staff of this is it, man. Like this year with this talent, this team, the window isn't any more wide open than it is right now. So I think the urgency that the Packers have this season with the way that the contracts are set up is so big that I hope they don't get to that moment where Matt LaFleur or the press or the media gets on the microphone and says, you may now take off your seatbelts. We're at 30,000 feet. So I think that's my take. I hope this team stays focused. I do agree with you that this game is huge. I agree with the points so far. I think the Texans defense can be got. I think there's going to be a lot of points. I can't wait to watch this Packers defense, Dan. This is it. This is the test. Jair's playing, right? Is that confirmed?
Who, Jair?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only guy that didn't practice today was Devontae Wyatt. Everyone else practiced.
So the defense is going to be fully stacked. You got clearly a playoff contender on the other side. This is going to be just an awesome Sunday of football. Can't wait to get up and watch it at noon.
I'm excited. And actually, from a consumer perspective, I don't mind that it's at noon. I don't know. I was talking to RJ today, who joins the morning show. I like noon games. I like 11 a.m. games because I can watch it and then I can kind of go about with my day. Especially if I'm going to the game and I'm not going to the Northwestern game. I'm not going to the Packer game on Sunday, but I do like the early morning game. Back up on John. I don't think anything that you just said is wrong. I also, and I talked about this at the end of the Rodgers era, right? Because what would happen is Packers would win a couple games and then they'd lose. And what would happen? Rodgers would go to the podium and he'd do this song and dance where he'd say, I think we were reading the press clippings a little bit too much. I think we're feeling ourselves a little bit too much. I think this would be good for us. My dream is that a team can check itself and stay grounded and stay intense while winning games. I would love to see that. That's my dream, is that this team can reach a cruising altitude, to continue the analogy from a record standpoint, while also staying locked in and really intense and really dialed in on every week's opponent. And I know human nature comes into play, but I think you can accomplish both. I think you can win games and also stay dialed in. I don't think you have to fight it out floating right above 500 to play your best ball and to stay intense. Like, I would always hear that crap from Rodgers after a loss, or Matt LaFleur after loss is like, man, we didn't have a good week of practice. Then address it during the week. Address it on Wednesday then. If you don't like the attitude of the players around you and you don't like how the practice is feeling, address it on Wednesday. Don't wait to lose on Sunday only to come to the podium and say, yeah, we weren't good enough in practice this week. Then what? The leaders and the coaches need to say that stuff during the week then. That is my retort to your retort to my point, Vagabond John. 608-321-1670. One more call, then we'll take our last break of the hour. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Hey, this is Frank the Tank from Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Hey, Frank.
The OG.
Hey, Frank. What's going on up in Eau Claire?
I've called Bill's show a couple times. First time I've actually gotten through on you. I love your commentary and stuff. It's all great.
Oh, thank you.
I'm on my way, Highway 27, heading up to God's country, the Chequamegon, in my cabin called Rut Lodge.
Oh, are you going hunting this weekend? Getting the bow out?
It's a little warm. I'm going to have the bow with, but I'll probably do some more scouting. I trail cams up, and they're in a spot where that iron ore is in the ground. You can't really get a signal to do one of those expensive cameras that send you pictures in the email.
No, you should have to go out and get the card. That's how I grew up bow hunting. That's how you should have to do it. Enough of this new technology.
Exactly. That's what I'm doing.
Damn straight, Frank.
But so here's one of my takes, and this is one of the things I've been saying is isn't it just a breath of fresh air talking about the Packers this year and even last year? I mean, you're done with the Rodgers thing is now the window somebody else has to deal with. It's just so a breath of fresh air to listen to these Packers and just talk about happiness, and there's the less drama and all that, and it's great listening to you guys, and it's been more fun for me this year. And yes, I think they'll beat the Texans and go Pack.
I think that I'm thinking that I'm feeling pretty good about the Packers' chances. I don't know who I'm going to pick. I suppose I should decide before 6:00. That's Frank the Tank listening up in Eau Claire. But en route, it's up north, Washburn County, Bayfield County, Douglas County. Jealous. Enjoy your travels, Frank. The last 2 years have been fun. Look, there were parts of last year that weren't so fun. I don't want to completely revise history. I don't think that's fair, right? Like, there were times where last year sucked. And then when the Packers went on a winning streak at the end of the year, we're like, well, it was all part of the journey. It's like, well, yeah, but we weren't exactly enjoying that part of the journey. You know, it's like when you do a family road trip that's 26-hour drive and, you know, you get down to your destination, you get home, and then, you know, you look back, it's like, oh, I love road tripping. Were you really loving it when you were in rural Alabama at 2:45 in the morning? Were you really loving it then? This year, there's some more expectations. But I think this team is really good. And I don't think we've even started to see how good this team can be yet. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that idea coming up next. I have a clip that I want to play for you. Final segment of the Wisco Sports Show, hour number 1 next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I do think, don't you guys feel like the Packers are probably the best team that hasn't gotten a ton of buzz this season? Packers are good.
Yes.
And it feels like they almost got more coverage when Malik Willis was playing than they have since Jordan Love came back. And I don't really know why that is. I mean, they're 4-2. They lost that week 1 game in Brazil, which doesn't count because the field was a slip and slide and Love got hurt. And then the only other game they've lost is to Minnesota by 2. And that was Love's first game back.
Well, when you put it like that, it's Craig Horlbeck, Ringer Fantasy Football Podcast with Danny Kelly, Danny Heifetz. I am not someone that's going to complain about narratives and, my team's not getting enough attention. But I think this Packers team has been better and has been more talented than I think a lot of the big picture NFL conversations would lead you to believe. The Lions have gotten a lot of attention, rightfully so. The Vikings have got a lot of attention, rightfully so. The Cowboys are discussed a lot. The Jets are getting discussed a ton for a team that's 2-4. And I don't even really have a gripe with that because it's kind of fun to talk about the Jets. We've done it on this show. They're an interesting story. I like interesting. I think it's Colin Cowherd who repeatedly over the years I've heard him say, I'm in the interesting business, which is just a bar. So I don't even think it's that big of a deal. I don't think the Packers are being done dirty, but the Packers lost week 1 in Brazil in a game that I don't think many held against them. It was week 1. It was a weird setting. The field was a mess. The Eagles are really talented. And it came down to the wire. And if the Packers had a good kicker, they'd probably win that game. And then Malik Willis plays really well for 2 weeks. And it was all about Matt LaFleur. Look what he's doing with Malik Willis. And then Jordan Love came back. They lost to the Vikings. And the attention kind of shifted away to some other teams. And not to toot my own horn, but at the end of the Vikings game and on that Monday after the game, I said, you know what? I like the way the game ended, even though I think the Packers built some momentum and built some drives because the Vikings might have lessened up a little bit. But it's not like that entire second half was garbage time. That was a one-possession game with a lot of time left in the fourth quarter. That was a real ball game by the end. The way that game ended, and then the way they continued to build the Rams game, then they took another step last week with the Cardinals. And now they have an opportunity to take another step, and all of a sudden, don't look now, this team that was super hyped in the offseason, widely considered really talented in the offseason, has built some momentum and is playing its best ball. And actually, those 2 losses, actually looking back, those could have been wins. We'll keep talking about this next. Wisco Sports Show.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Packers are pretty healthy heading into Sunday's showdown with Houston. The final injury report had just 3 names on it when it was released earlier this afternoon. Wide receiver Dontavian Wicks, defensive lineman Colby Wooden are listed as questionable for the game. Both practiced on a limited basis this week. The lone player that didn't practice at all this week, defensive lineman Devontae Wyatt, will miss his 3rd straight game with an ankle injury. Houston going to be without a couple of key defenders. Kick on Sunday is at noon. Turning to the Badgers, they're going to be at Northwestern tomorrow morning. Wisconsin fell at home to the Wildcats last year in a game that still had Coach Luke Fickell bothered when he spoke about it with reporters earlier this week.
It's a really solid football team. I think they do the things they do really well. You know, they're physical. They play well up front. I thought last year they controlled the line of scrimmage, and particularly better than any other game that we played last year. When I say they controlled the line of scrimmage, that's probably me not wanting to say that they dominated us up front on both sides of the ball. But in a lot of ways, they dominated us up front on both sides of the ball in a lot of other areas.
Wisconsin looking for its first 3-game winning streak under Fickell. They're favored by 7.5. Kick tomorrow is at 11 a.m.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
When a company only does business in Wisconsin, that's Wisconsin Strong. Rural Mutual provides all lines of insurance, including commercial, farm, home, and auto. And your premiums stay right here to keep Wisconsin strong. Local agents, local underwriters, local claims adjusters.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the preseason is in the past for the Bucs. They closed it out last night with a loss at Dallas. Now their focus shifts to the regular season. It gets underway coming up next Wednesday when they travel to Philly to take on the 76ers. The 2 teams among the favorites to win the Eastern Conference. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
We just got to go out there and handle business, do our job, and like we try and do every week, try and put up as many points as possible, and like I said, take care of the ball. But, 2 good teams, you got to go out there and play your best is what it comes down to.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Cody Stoots has covered the Texans for a long time. Covers it now on his own platform, simply called Houston Football. You can find him on Twitter, find him on YouTube. He's going to join us in about a half hour to talk about this matchup. You could argue that this is the biggest game of the weekend. You could argue that of a couple games. Lions-Vikings, huge matchup. Packers-Texans, huge matchup. Chiefs-Niners, 3 o'clock game, huge matchup. And while people are rolling their eyes about it a little bit, Jets-Steelers is a huge matchup too, because I think if the Jets lose this game, their season is probably done. And I don't believe in the Jets. I certainly don't believe in them as a contender, but you could make the case, well, if they win this weekend, they got the Patriots next weekend. Devontae Adams is there. Who knows? We've seen Aaron Rodgers take a team on a run before after starting slowly. But if they lose this weekend, I think you can argue their season's dead, which makes Sunday night's game really, really important too. So there's 2 or 3 games on Sunday, let alone 2 games on Monday night. Those games aren't as meaningful. Might be fun. Monday night football games are always fun, but there's 3 games on Sunday, 3 or 4 that you could argue, man, huge stakes, massive storylines. Result is really, really important for one team or for both. Sunday's going to be a really important day. And of course, CJ Stroud versus Jordan Love at the beginning of it all at the noon game. I want to play you that clip, the Ringer Fantasy Football Podcast, one more time, because I think it's worth mentioning. I think it's worth discussing for another minute or two before we get back into some calls.
Don't you guys feel like the Packers are probably the best team that hasn't gotten a ton of buzz this season? Packers are good. Yes. And it feels like they almost got more coverage when Malik Willis was playing than they have since Jordan Love came back. And I don't really know why that is. I mean, they're 4-2. They lost that week 1 game in Brazil, which doesn't count because the field was a slip and slide and Love got hurt. And then the only other game they've lost is to Minnesota by 2. And that was Love's first game back.
Let me, for a moment, create a hypothetical situation for you here to illustrate the point that, by the way, that's Craig Horlbeck, the Ringer Fantasy Football Podcast. If the Packers come out and look really good and handle the Texans, let's say, I'm not predicting this. I'm not saying that I would bet on this. Let's just say, for the sake of this discussion, the Packers come out on Sunday. Lambeau is fired up. The Packers defense, that pass rush, has its best game of the season, and the Packers win 35-17. Just a really, really comfortable, commanding, impressive win. Doesn't the NFL world all of a sudden look at the Packers and say, okay, wait. So they're 5-2, and they just beat their counterpart in the AFC, team that has Super Bowl aspirations. They've played better every week now for each of the last 4 weeks as Jordan Love returned from injury. And their only 2 losses were to the very talented Eagles week 1 in South America on a field that made it almost impossible to play normal football, and to the Minnesota Vikings, who were gapping everybody. They lost that game by 2 points in a game where their kicker couldn't hit anything, and Jordan Love was coming back off a significant knee injury. Maybe we should wait a minute. This Packers team kind of snuck up on us. And it's funny that this Packers team, with a big win over Houston, would kind of sneak up on everybody, considering how much offseason hype they got. Everyone loved to talk about the Packers in the offseason, how hyped they were, how talented they were. They lost week 1, and then Jordan Love got hurt, and they kind of went away. And they got discussed during that 2-game winning streak over Indy and Tennessee because Matt LaFleur was doing a great job. Wow, look at what he's doing with Malik Willis. And ever since Jordan Love has come back, there's been more focus on the Vikings and Lions, which is fine, by the way. I'm not someone who bitches and pisses and moans about narratives. That's so tired. Well, the national narrative, who cares? Okay, I'm not saying that this is a problem. I'm just saying there's a world in which, to the point that was made in that podcast clip that I played for you, if the Packers come out and look awesome on Sunday, does the entirety of the NFL world not go, wait a minute? They've gotten better each of the last 4 weeks, and their 2 losses are not fluky, because any win or loss could be considered a fluke if you really parsed it out. But all of a sudden, people are like, wait, this Packers team is good. And we focused on other NFC teams, which is fine, but I kind of like those points. The most coverage, the most hype that the Packers have got this year is when Malik Willis was playing. But they've shown when Jordan Love is healthy and playing his normal self, and they can avoid some drops and penalties, this offense is unbelievable, and this defense is top 10 in EPA per play. And I still don't think their pass rush has figured it out yet. So this team still has a lot of room to grow, which is exciting because they're already 4-2 and they're set up beautifully to continue to take steps over the next month. 608-321-1670. Let's get back to your calls. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric, what is going on with you today?
I'm double dipping.
You're triple dipping is what you're doing. Well, it's like 2.5 technically.
I'm putting my whole mouth in the dip.
Yeah, basically. You're the only caller on hold. Otherwise, I would roll my eyes at this. But what's up?
All right, so you guys have forgot about one thing here, and I think it's something that you should be concerned about, okay? All right?
Okay.
And it's not a joke or anything about the kicker, but this kicker, where did he play? Jacksonville for how many years?
He was in Jacksonville for, and I can look it up. He was in Jacksonville for a little while, but he was mostly in Denver for a long time.
Oh, I thought he was in Jacksonville the whole time. So my point, because if he was in Jacksonville the whole time, he hasn't made a kick that mattered in years.
Yeah, that's true.
In Denver.
That's true.
Right? Now, he's going to get to Green Bay. This is how bad Jacksonville is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If a hurricane hits Jacksonville, there's not even hurricane claims because it looks the same after as it did before.
You know?
Okay? So,
yep.
Now, the Packer fans, there are going to be 70,000 people there that really want him to make that kick. There's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on that kick. None that he's never felt before. I just want to let you go. You can keep making excuses for your losses. I'll let you go for the weekend. All right.
Wow,
Have a great weekend, Grant.
You too, Eric. No one's making excuses for losses. I'm just saying those losses could have been wins. I'm not making excuses. And by the way, to your point that McManus has never kicked in games that matter, he was the kicker on the Super Bowl team in 2015 in Denver. And I'm not sure. Postseason kicker, cold weather kicker. He's done a little bit of everything because he was in Denver and he was in Jacksonville. To your point about the hurricane in Jacksonville, can someone explain something to me? And Eric, you're an engineer, so maybe we could talk about this at a later date. You've filled up your caller allotment for today. So the Trop got destroyed in this hurricane, right? The roof was blown off and everything. They've already come out, they being the Rays and those involved with the team, they've already come out and said, we won't be ready for opening day. We won't be able to fix the stadium in time for opening day. And I'm going to be honest, I need someone to explain that to me. I need someone to explain to me why they can't fix a roof and any other damage to the stadium by opening day 2025. That's the rest of October, all of November, all of December, all of January, all of February, and almost all of March. That's, let's call it conservatively 5.5 months. It's really closer to 6. Why? You can almost build a new stadium in that. Like, I don't get how they can confidently come out and say we can't have the stadium ready in time. How? Now, maybe because of hurricane reasons and maybe they can't even start work on it for another month. Okay, but even if they can't start work on it until, let's say, after Thanksgiving, you can't fix a roof December, January, February, most of March. It's just odd to me that they came out and said, we can't do it. It would be one thing if we got to mid-February and they're like, hey, we need a little bit more time. That I would get. What happened to the American spirit? What happened to the type of gusto and pizzazz that put us on the moon and beat the Soviets? We can't fix an effing roof? And I don't mean to be insensitive to those going through the hurricane. It's nothing about that. It's just I don't know how people can come out in mid-October when a roof on a dome has been destroyed and say, hey, 6 months, not enough time. We won't be ready. What is it? Is it the bureaucracy? Do different construction companies and repair companies need to bid on, is that what's going to take time? Why is it taking that long? I don't get that. And I guess I don't know why any of you would be in a position to explain this to me. Maybe someone works in construction or building restoration. I don't know. I just think it's bizarre. I think it's odd. It's like, wait, so we already know in mid-October that the Rays need to play somewhere else at home to start next season. It doesn't start until the last couple of days of March 2025. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. to hint at the hurricane points that really a joke that Eric was making, but that's something that was going through my head. It's like, we already know. Again, it would be one thing to come out in mid-February and say, hey, we need a month. We're a little bit behind. This is taking a little bit longer than we thought. Okay. It's a loser mentality to come out and be like, nah, 6 months isn't enough. Well, get to work then. Get some more people down there. How did this country ever beat the Soviets to the moon? I don't know. Vagabond John tweets in and says FEMA ran out of money. If it's government funded and government backed restoration repairs, well, then there's your answer, is because it's not a private sector company. Put a private sector company in charge of it. It'll be done by Christmas. I don't get that. It's something I've been thinking about all week, and I haven't had a reason or an excuse to bring it up until now. It just doesn't make any sense. Sorry. Back to the Packers though. 608-321-1670. Take more of your calls. Eric on I-90. Do you have a follow-up thought on this? He said, I'd be happy to call back and explain the mechanical engineering difficulties involved with repairing a roof and all the physics of holding a football for a kick. Eric, if this is you calling in right now, I'm hanging up on you. It's fair warning, okay? We have a caller on hold. I'm about to bring him on. Eric, if this is you, I'm hanging up on you. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Big Ron.
Big Ron. Okay, Big Ron. What's going on? What do you think about Packers Texans?
What do I think about what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Packers Texans, or whatever else you were calling in to talk about. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I just got out of work and I got into my car and I just called you straight up. So I haven't been listening.
That's okay.
But I gave you. I wanted to talk a little. I know you're not the biggest college football fan, like national college football fan.
Sure. What game do you want to talk about?
World, but I want to talk about Alabama, Tennessee. That's a big top 11 matchup. Number 7 Alabama at number 11 Tennessee in Knoxville. And Alabama has been very inconsistent this year. They look great against Wisconsin, but Wisconsin's starting quarterback got injured in that halfway through that game, and you had a guy in Locke had to come in there. And he didn't get any reps in practice, so they crushed us, and we weren't playing. And he didn't play well, and the Badgers didn't play well. But since then, Bama's defense has gone into the tank. They gave up 40 points to a Vanderbilt team that lost to Georgia State, and then they gave up 25 points to a South Carolina team that the week before scored 3 points against Ole Miss, who isn't exactly known for their defense. So I have a gambling bet for your listeners. It's to take the Tennessee team total under 27.5 points.
Okay. So we're betting on the strength of the Bama defense. Is that what you're saying here?
Yeah, we're fading the Bama defense. Now Tennessee offense has been a little bit inconsistent itself.
Well, their quarterback has tailed off after a really hot start, right?
Yeah. His first name's Nico. His last name, I don't want to murder it and try to pronounce it.
Yeah.
But he got to. I'm surprised you know that.
I heard Cowherd mention it this week. I had no idea what his name is. I just heard that quarterback's tailed off.
Yeah.
And by the way, kiss my ass. What do you mean? I'm surprised you knew that. I know things. I follow things sometimes a little bit.
Well, I know you're very knowledgeable, Grant, when it comes to local sports, but you've admitted you're not a big national college football guy.
No, so I watch the biggies.
Okay.
And the Badgers, I guess. I haven't watched Tennessee yet this year, though. I watched Bama Vanderbilt and Bama Georgia, but that's about it.
Yeah, and then we got another big game. I don't have an opinion on it, but number 1 Texas is playing number 5 Georgia. That should be a great game too.
See, this is why, Big Ron, I appreciate it. This is why, we all, such a classic example of change in sports, right? Anytime anything changes, like, oh, I hate it. Well, I can't stay this way forever. What about the tradition? And what about that? And then after the conferences realign, it's like, so wait, one Saturday, I get Ohio State, Oregon, and the next week we get Texas, Georgia. Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea. Maybe this is going to work out for the best. I'll try to watch as much college football just because there's so many good games. I'm going to a comedy show tomorrow night. Never been to a comedy show before. So I'm doing that for the first time tomorrow, but I'll be able to watch the Badgers in the morning. And and watch some college football. I've been a little bit better. And to your point, Ron, I might not sit down and spend my entire Saturday watching college football, but I consume a little college football talk. And I heard Cowherd mention to Klatt this week that Tennessee's quarterback had tailed off a little bit. That's the only. I should have played it cooler. Of course I know. Why wouldn't I know that? No, I just heard Cowherd mention that this week. 608-321-1670. A call and then a break. Who's this?
Grant, fins up. Happy Friday.
Cone roller, fins up.
First off, we never went to the moon. Sorry to burst your bubble.
Yeah,
and
that's a good
second
point.
of all, I agree with Vagabond John. You know, the stadium's probably owned by the county or the city. It's going to take forever to get the funding and, you know, government work. You got to bid several jobs. You got to bid out contractors. I mean, I don't blame them for already announcing the delay.
So it's a to your best guess. You wouldn't know this for sure, but your best guess is kind of what my thought was. Is it's bureaucracy. It's not that once the people get in there with tools, it's going to take 6 months. It's just going to take forever for people to get in there with tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
This country's so
I mean,
stupid.
we still don't know what's going on with the Mitchell Park domes.
Yeah.
Imagine if that was Tropicana Field.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Do we even know what we're doing? I thought they took a vote on that. Are those coming down, or what are they doing with those?
Well, you know, they vote on the options, and then they got to have some urbanists draft up some stuff in SimCity so they can
a rendering. Of course, we got to get the renderings.
Yes, and then we got to vote on the renderings, and then they got to raise sales tax by another couple percent, and you know, just taxes go up, spending goes up, the value of our dollar goes down.
By the way, I just Googled it. 133 million domes reimagined project gains backer on county board. Yeah, you're right. This thing is just lost in the sauce of meetings and committees. And yeah, you're right. That's actually a good comp. Another dome. I like the Mitchell Park domes. The problem is you can only go like once a year. It's the same with the aquarium at Discovery World. Like if you start going, you can't get a season pass to the Mitchell Park domes. It's a lot of the same things. You know, you see the same plants and they're cool, but it's kind of like a once a year thing.
Once a year, I'd say like twice in a lifetime.
Well, okay, if you grew up in and around Milwaukee, and okay, you're right, I suppose. I don't know. I like them. They're kind of cool. But anyways.
So what comedian are you seeing tomorrow?
Jeffrey Asmus.
Oh, never heard of him.
He went to UW, actually. He sometimes, I'll send you a picture of him. He sometimes performs in a Wisconsin basketball crew neck, which I'm a fan of.
All right. I love that. And hearing a lot of good stuff from Greg Gard on this starting lineup. Once again, I think this team's going to have a lot of depth. I know we're not here to talk Badger basketball, but a lot of depth.
Well, Big Ron just brought up Tennessee football. I think at least until after this next break, all is fair on the show. And I know you mentioned Greg Gard yesterday with Tony Bennett. The red-white scrimmage is coming up on Sunday. Maybe I'll try to go. I think Zach's going to go. In any event, I promise a Badger basketball segment next week. How's that going?
Good. I would love that. I think we're going to learn a lot from this red-white scrimmage. Sounds like Kamari McGee is slated to be the starting point guard. But I just love the depth they'll have with Freitag coming off the bench. And, you know, I don't even know if Klesmit's going to start this year, honestly.
Oh, God, they have some dogs, man. Oh, you got me fired up. Cohen, I have a good weekend. You have a Packers prediction before I let you go?
Yeah, I think Packers dominate in their winter warning uniforms. You know, you always look faster when you're wearing all white. I don't make the rules. And so I'm going Packers 33, Texans 19. That might be a scoregami, but I'll take it.
I like that too. The more we talk about this, the better I feel about the Packers. We'll pick this up on the other side. I'm a little bit late for break, and I want to get to our guest on time. It's the Wisco Sports Show. Back after this.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I think this is just such a pivotal game for the Packers because here they are at 4-2. And for a year and a half now, right? Even all last year, they didn't really have much separation in the win-loss column, right? They kind of just floated. Last year was a lot of catch-up, trying to get back to 500 and then trying to get yourselves in the playoffs. They haven't. They're 4-2 now. They're 5-2 if they win this game. They go down to Jacksonville after this. That looks like 6-2 because the Jaguars are awful. They're just a terrible football team. You start to build that momentum, but you got to win this game because the difference between 5-2 going to Jacksonville and 4-3, it's pretty significant. So getting this win, to me, it's just so pivotal in this early part of the season.
It's Ryan Wood. I played that cut a couple of times today. Bill's show. That's from last night when he joined us at 5 o'clock. He's right. I think they win this week. They go to 5-2. They're playing with all the momentum in the world. They got a very winnable game against Jacksonville next weekend. I just think, in a sense, they reach cruising altitude, right? They get some separation in the win-loss column, which is something, to Ryan's point, they haven't had at all. And we'll talk about some of the X's and O's, how the Packers might be able to do that, or maybe how the Texans are able to prevent the Packers from doing that. They have some injuries up the middle at linebacker, right? They're really susceptible to play action. There are going to be some opportunities for the Packers, at least offensively, to make hay against the Texans on Sunday. Still not sure about the defense, but I think the defense has been pretty solid. If the pass rush shows up, I think the defense can be excellent in a way that it wasn't against the Vikings and the Eagles, kind of the only other two offenses with comparable talent that they've faced, comparable to the Texans, that is, so far this year through the first 6 games. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is John in Cornell.
John, how you doing up in Cornell? What's going on?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing excellent. I think the more time passes this weekend, the more we learn about the Texans' health situation, the better I feel about the Packers' chances on Sunday.
Yes, I do too. Few points I want to make. I know you got that caller coming on, so I don't want to be too long.
No, we got time.
Okay, so point one, you were talking about the losses. Eric on I-90 said something, you were making excuses. I agree 100% with you. You are not making excuses. It's okay to point out the facts that, hey, if a few things happened, you easily could have won those 2 losses. You need to be 6-0.
Look,
right?
and if my team is a contender, and we hope that this team is a contender, John, I want to be able to look back at a season where there are very few losses, and I want to be able to look at those losses and say, yeah, you lost that week, but I kind of understand why maybe the team wasn't at their A game, or the losses are close. right? I don't want my team to at any point be getting their doors blown off. And they didn't. And I'm not making excuses. I'm not excusing away those losses. But if the Packers go to 5-2, 6-2, and you're able to look back and say, oh, the 2 losses were, I kind of can see why those happened. I understand it. I just feel good about my team in that spot.
Absolutely. Agreed 100%. Second thing I wanted to say, I almost called in yesterday, but I think it's great that Jordan Love is spreading the ball around. I feel like the great quarterbacks like Tom Brady and your Joe Montanas and maybe a handful of others, the great ones didn't have a true favorite. I believe that's my own theory. I feel like Tom Brady was known for whatever receivers he had, he would throw him the ball. Now, he did favor Gronk as he got older and stuff, but, like, he spread the ball to everyone, and they were just phenomenal with whatever people Bill Belichick picked up. They were always great. So that was one point I wanted to make. My last point, and then I'll get off, is the Dome in Jacksonville. My theory is, being that I'm in carpentry, things like that, generally speaking, if you're going to remodel, remodeling takes longer, and it's a lot more complicated than new builds.
Okay.
So it could be that, plus the funding, if it has to do with government stuff or whatever, which is beside the point. So if it's remodeling, or if it's a new build, or if it's funding, and number 3, if there isn't a plan, you have to have a plan before you even start. So that would be my guesses as to why the thing is delayed. That's all I got to say. God bless. Have a wonderful weekend.
God bless. God bless up in Cornell. You too, John. I just don't get. Look, it's a loser mentality. That's all I'm saying. I know nothing about remodeling, nothing about building restoration. It's just loser mentality to come out in mid-October and be like, "Hey, we can't have it done by April 1st." That's not the attitude that built this country. That's not how we got to the moon. I want to get this call in 2 minutes before we get to Cody Stoots. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Southside Scott.
Hey, Southside Scott. What's going on? Nice win for your Broncos last night.
The offense played better. There were still a few unadvised throws, but it was good at the end.
You'll have that for a young quarterback.
Yeah. And a comment that I heard, or something I heard yesterday after I hung up, Timbers is still open. I live next to 10 Mile Hill, so I go by there all the time.
Okay. So it is still open. Timbers is?
Yeah, Timbers is still open.
Okay, good. It's good business. I like that place. No, and I'm happy for your Broncos last night too, Scott. I'm sorry I do have to run. Thank you for following up after last night to ask about your Broncos and to clear up the Timber 10 Mile situation. Between the Trop roof and the bar at the bottom of 10 Mile Hill, which, for those who aren't sure what the heck we're talking about, which is probably most of you, that is in between La Crosse and Coon Valley on, is that 14? I always get those highways confused. I believe 14. Right before you go up the hill, and then you come down the other hill, you take a left, and you're into the valley. Coon Valley. All right. Cody Stoots, Houston football. Recurring guest on the show. He's not on often, but when he's on, man, does he deliver. He's going to join us next to preview Packers Texans.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I mean, when you go to Lambeau and the history that's in Lambeau is always, it's one of the coolest venues in the NFL to go play a road game at. You know, it's the fans are always there 100% of the time, like early grilling, brats, all that stuff. You see it every time you roll into the stadium, you know, and then once you're in the stadium and you just see what it looks like, it's just so unique. It's different than really any other stadium in the NFL. I'd say at this point, that really is what makes it special for me more than going to Green Bay, you know, where I spent a lot of time. That's kind of worn off now after my I think, 4th or 5th trip. But the just Lambeau itself is always a really cool experience.
It's Bobby Slowick. That cut brought to my attention earlier today by Mike Clemens. I didn't know that Bobby Slowick was from Green Bay. Went to Southwest and then played at Michigan Tech, which is badass. Love the UP. And as if many have told the story, right, ended up going through Pro Football Focus, bouncing around the NFL, and now coordinating an offense down in Houston that caught a lot of people's attention. And he gets to come home this weekend. A story that I was unfamiliar with, brought to my attention earlier today by Mike Clemens. And that's what great reporters do. Speaking of great reporters, Cody Stoots has covered the Texans for a long time, over a decade. His own coverage you can find at Houston Football on YouTube. You can find him on Twitter at Cody Stoots. He joins us now, and you can see him on the live stream as well if you're interested in seeing our beautiful faces. What's going on, Cody?
Hey, my man, great to see you. Great to be talking to you and the fine folks up there up north, man. What a fun matchup this game's going to be. And what you didn't hear from Bobby Slowick is when he was in 8th grade, he was at a Packers game, sat next to some opposing fans, and was so terrorized by those opposing fans in the middle of a Packers game where they weren't playing well. He left and walked home, 1.5 miles, walked home. Oh, man, I felt bad for Bobby, but Man, he got it going last week with this offense after a little shaky, rocky start. And what a fun one we got on our hands this Sunday.
So do you want to start big picture with the stakes because the narrative's Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud? And I think a lot of people in the offseason kind of drew some comparisons between these two teams and the two conferences. We could start big picture. We could talk about the personnel, the injuries the Texans are dealing with, kind of the strengths and the weaknesses of each team. Where do you want to start?
Bubba, if you want to talk about steaks, I love talking about steaks.
Yeah.
From porterhouse, ribeye. Oh, you mean the steaks for this game. Let's start there, and man, we'll get through everything. We'll make sure all the people are informed here on this one.
So what do you think the differences are between CJ Stroud and Jordan Love? And these two get lumped in together, but what do you think? In what ways are they similar? And in what ways do you think they're unique and different as players?
One's awesome and efficient, and then one is really good and has some inefficiencies to his game. And that's where I am. And look, Stroud's incredible. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes with the football. The accuracy is pinpoint, and he's done a really good job growth-wise in getting better in taking what defenses give him. I mean, I think that's been a big conversation in the NFL is trying to take away explosive plays and cover 2 this and cover 4 that and shell defenses. The only shell I want to talk about is that chocolate that turns into a shell on my ice cream. That's what I want to talk about, okay? I don't want to talk about shell defenses, all that stuff.
Does suck. Yeah.
Offense is fun. Offense is cool. Stroud's not afraid to try to live in the middle of the field as well. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks that are scared to go over the middle of the field because they don't trust their eyes. That's not either of these guys. They'll go make a play and they'll go take a shot. There's actually been a conversation point from defenders this week is quarterbacks are sometimes afraid to take a shot and afraid to make a mistake. That's not either one of these guys. They'll take a shot. They'll take a big play. They'll try to use the arm talent. And it's a really good matchup between quarterbacks. I just feel like Stroud's just a little bit of maybe a tier ahead of where Jordan Love is. Is Jordan Love going to be on Stroud's level one day? Like, I can certainly see it. I was a big Jordan Love hater. Previously, I didn't believe in him. I didn't see it in college. I didn't think that waiting was going to come out or going to come out to be a good thing for him. And he's finally kind of put some stuff together, but there's still a little, I call it recklessness to his game that, if that gets tuned out, then, he gets in the same conversation, the same zip code as Stroud. That's where you want to be. You want to be in the zip code of greatness. I think Stroud's in the zip code of greatness. I think Love's real close. I don't know if he's going to move on to CJ Street to continue that analogy, but if they were in the same neighborhood, I think that'd be a real big jump for Jordan Love here soon, which he's not far from making.
Yeah, and right, and like we watch Brett Favre, right? So a little bit of fearlessness, right? A little bit of craziness can be good. Too much can completely turn a game upside down. So it's about finding that balance, and it's very different from Aaron Rodgers, a player that would sometimes be. Look, I don't want to complain that he was he didn't turn the ball over enough. Like, that's a stupid complaint to have about a quarterback, right?
He was appropriately careful. I would
say so.
Yeah.
Tell us about the path the Texans have taken here so far, because they're 5-1, and I don't want to cheapen any of their wins. They hadn't really dominated anyone until New England, right? Indy, they scored a lot of points, but so did Indy. Chicago was close. That was an odd game. It didn't necessarily feel like the Texans were going to lose it, but it never really turned into a blowout. Jacksonville was close. Buffalo was close. So kind of tell us about maybe the ups and downs the team has taken so far and where the fans and everybody sits with the team through 6 games.
Yeah, they've dominated pieces of games, but they haven't dominated a full game. And they did a pretty good job against the Patriots. I mean, they started 14-0, hit a lull, and then finished off the Patriots there in the second half. But they'd have lost or played a much closer game to a good team on that Sunday because they hit that lull there. I mean, they should have been 21, 24, 28-0 at halftime, and instead it was a 14-7 game at halftime. Like, that was pretty disappointing, but they've had dominant moments. Like, anytime you can make Josh Allen 9 of 30 for 131 yards through the air, I don't care who's playing for him at wide receiver. That's one of the worst stat lines of his life. That's one of the worst stat lines for a quarterback to throw that much in like 20 years. Like, this defensive line is going to cause havoc every week. They are the most dependable piece of this Texans team. But to your point, there hasn't been a full, complete, put together, dominant performance by this Texans team yet. And there have been some disappointing moments. You let Chicago hang around. You let Jacksonville hang around. You let Buffalo hang around. Like, there have not been a put away. Like, you're going to be able to come back on this Texans team or stick around with them until they put together a complete performance. Part of that's been the offense. Part of that's been Joe Mixon got hurt with a hip drop tackle in the middle of that Bears game, and they had really bad rushing attack in the meantime. At one point, they had running backs averaging 1.3 yards per carry. Like, it was not good. Okay. I think in the time Mixon was gone, but right before he returned, they were 3.1 yards per carry with running backs. Like, they had some really rough moments running the football, which kept them from getting the flow going. Mixon's back. He's a monster. He changes the mentality and the mood of this team. And you kind of saw what they put together last week. But this defensive line, super impressive. And I believe this offense has still not reached what its potential can be ultimately this season.
Well, it's funny. It sounds like there's some comparisons. The Packers, they dealt with 2 weeks of, or I guess two or 3 weeks where Jordan Love missed time, and so that's a factor too. But the Packers have shown these flashes. It's like, man, when receivers don't drop the ball, when there's when you're not committing dumb penalties, like, they can be brilliant. You've seen it in quarters and in halves. It didn't really all come together. Not unlike the Texans, they did it against the Patriots. The Packers did it against the Cardinals this last weekend, where it's like, okay, there it is. For the better part of 4 quarters, we saw it for extended stretches, and it's kind of cool that these two teams are now meeting at this point in the season. I want to get your thoughts on the Texans defense and where the Packers could maybe have an in to score points on their level. I'm just curious, how's Stephon Diggs been? What's he been like? Because Jair Alexander versus Stephon Diggs, there's some history there. They were both in the NFC North, and he's a new arrival. So just give me your take on Diggs through 6 games.
Diggs has been real fun. I felt like before the season got going, he was going to be the top target guy. Not the most yards, not the most touchdowns, but he's going to be the top target guy for this team. He was the best offensive player in training camp for the Texans, and he's had a really good start to the season. Stepped up big last week with Nico Collins down, the first matchup the Texans had without Nico Collins because of his hamstring injury, and the mood, the mentality. The thing I really liked, CJ Stroud told this story this week. He said Stephon Diggs came over to him and he said, hey, by the way, like, I've played with some really good quarterbacks. I've been around some really good quarterbacks. Like, you've got that in you. I want you to be confident out there. Like, you are a really good quarterback. And I haven't heard or seen anything about the whole bad teammate Stephon Diggs. He wants to go out there. He wants to win. He was very cordial when asked about Jair Alexander this week. He's like, look, he's really good. He's aggressive. We know about aggressive guys. We got one on our defense at cornerback and in Derek Stingley. No individual play takes on more meaning. I want to prove it every play. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. So I like that. But Diggs has been a fun man, and 8 straight touchdowns against the Packers. He's been a cheese grater. Okay. Yeah. Stephon Diggs has been really good against this Packers team. So I'd be looking for him to be a early focus of this offense come Sunday.
Cody Stoots is here. You can find his coverage on YouTube and on Twitter at Houston Football, and he's on Twitter at Cody_Stoots. So the defensive line is terrifying for Houston.
Yes.
A pair of outstanding edge rushers, deep along the middle. They have guys who can penetrate and who can pressure. The linebackers are banged up, and they've been susceptible to play action. So where could you see the Packers making some hay, and where could you maybe see the Texans getting to Jordan Love and having some success against this offense?
This is the first time it's ever been said on radio. I have coined the term the linebacker ups for the 2 backup linebackers that the Texans have. That's linebacker ups. You guys can steal it and use it as much as you want. No fee necessary. Look, Azeez Al-Shire and Henry To'oTo'o, they're the only 2 linebackers the Texans played, and they're not playing this weekend. So it's going to be 2 backup guys, Neville Hewitt, Jake Hansen. They're good enough to be backups. They're not good football players, or they'd be starting somewhere. Neville Hewitt's a special teams ace. Hansen plays a lot on special teams. They both had excellent preseasons, but they didn't have excellent preseasons against starters. They had it against backups. So that's tough. That's going to be really tough. That's going to be coverage in the middle of the field because the Texans will, use To'oTo'o in a coverage every now and then, not out of desire, but out of necessity. Because, again, they only play those 2 linebackers. So it's going to be tough there. Going to have a backup corner out there in D'Angelo Ross, which is scary. The Patriots targeted him 1 time last week. Okay. They targeted D'Angelo Ross, backup cornerback for the Texans, 1 time last week with a rookie quarterback. I don't know what they're doing. I tell you what, Love LaFleur and company ain't going to target D'Angelo Ross just 1 time on
He's
Sunday.
no Alex Van Pelt with what? Jalen Polk and Pop
Yeah.
Douglas. Like more weapons to play with and a guy who's called an offense before this year, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like D'Angelo Ross was targeted one time in 2023. It was a 75-yard Amari Cooper touchdown. Like he was targeted one time last week and it was an incomplete. Like, I mean, what are you doing? You got to target this guy. You got to go after him. If that offensive line for Green Bay holds up, there are opportunities to really get after the Texans because of those linebackers and because of D'Angelo Ross. I love this Texans team's ability to stop the run. I'm going to be surprised if they're not one of the 5 best run-stopping teams in football when it's all said and done. But Mario Edwards was a big part of that. Mario Edwards is out this week, and he's out for the next 3 games after this because of a violation of the league substance abuse policy. So, a little bit of a backup situation there at one of the defensive tackle spots. It's 5 starters down, 6 if you count Edwards on the defense. That's a tough situation to be in. It's not going to be easy to slow down this Packers team. You're going to have somebody step up, make a play as a role player, and you're going to have the stars be stars in this one.
So Laramie Tunsil's back to a full participant, and he's ready and a full go. This Packers defense has had a lot of good individual performers, and they've had good moments, and they've handled the bad teams. I don't want to say they got their doors blown off, but they had bad stretches against the Eagles in week 1 and bad stretches against the Vikings in Jordan Love's first game back. The pass rush is kind of the final piece that we're waiting on because Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney at safety, we've really liked that. If Jair's healthy, Nixon on the other side has been good, at least against the wide receivers he's faced. We'll see if that changes this week. How are the Texans in their ability to protect against Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary? Those guys really haven't gotten it going yet. I love the Packers front. They're deep. They got a lot of guys. They haven't really busted through and had a huge game other than against Will Levis, but I don't even really count that.
Yeah, you're not going to beat Tunsil and Titus Howard consistently. The tackles for the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Tunsil's one of the best pass blockers in football. The run blocking, you'd love a little bit more, but he's really good at pass blocking, so you live with that. Howard's good enough. He'll have a moment here or there that he can be. It's these 3 interior guys that haven't played very well. Juice Scruggs at center has been a little iffy. Kenyon Green at left guard's been the iffiest offensive lineman, and Shaq Mason's looked a little bit slower, a little bit older than he has in recent years. And so it's those 3 interior guys. So they've had issues with basic stunts. They've had issues picking up blitzes. I mean, it feels like once or twice a game, I'm watching somebody sack C.J. Stroud and somebody's sitting around there on the offensive line not blocking anybody. I'm like, how does this happen? Like, I know it's not easy, but those 3 interior guys, the interior pressure is where I worry about. And then obviously you get some push on the interior. It makes the tackles jobs a little bit harder. So if you're getting after the Texans, couple of stunts, couple of blitzes, and then just hope your interior guys win one-on-one. And then you could get a little bit of a pass rush on CJ Stroud. He's very good about extending plays though. He does that thing that Mahomes does where he kind of just drifts and drifts and drifts. And then, there's somebody that's open because you can't cover for 5 or 6 seconds.
Are you surprised this is a noon game?
This should have been a primetime game. It's annoying that it's not. It should have been a primetime game. And if the Texans are good again this year, and this was a year from now, like it would be a primetime game. But this is Monday Night Football worthy. This is Sunday Night Football worthy, and it's probably too good for Thursday Night Football. So, at the very least, maybe an afternoon game. But best game in the noon slate. That's pretty good too.
Yeah, and it's just a bummer because when there's a great game on a noon slate, there's so many games at noon, it just prevents you from watching other games. Like I'd love to also watch the Vikings and the Lions who are matching up as well. I kind of wish that this was like a 3:30 game in mid-November when it was a little cooler. I just think the aura, and I know the Texans, they play in a dome. I think the aura of a game, the theatrical value of a game when it's outside under the lights and you can see the breath and I don't know. This matchup's going to be great. I would tweak time and location a little bit, but that's nitpicking.
Daniil Hunter told me, obviously he's played a ton of games at Lambeau, having been a Viking. Yeah. He told me, hey, the playing surface in Green Bay is among the worst in football when it's cold and wet, or even when it's cold. And he's like, it gets too slippery. He's like, we caught him at the right time of the schedule to not have to worry too much about the playing surface. And then Dalton Schultz told a colleague of mine, Landry Locker, he told him roughly the same thing. He's like, what do you remember from the game a couple of years ago in Lambeau? And he's like, I remember that I needed to change my cleats because like it's, you got to have good footing that playing surface is one of the more unique ones. Not only is Lambeau unique because it's Lambeau Field, but that playing surface is something that players are inherently aware about.
Well, especially as more stadiums go to domes, right? Like, more stadiums are just going to turf, which is fine. But then the outlier becomes the natural grass outside. Do you have a prediction, 60 seconds, how you see this game going on Sunday before I let you go?
I like this to be a shootout. I could see this, both teams in the 30s. I really like this Texans offense with Mixon there. It really is going to come down to who's going to make more mistakes. I just believe the Packers are going to make more mistakes with the football. An interception or two turns this thing, and the Texans eke and squeak this one out. But I'm not going to be surprised if I'm sitting here and the Cheeseheads are happy at the end of the game on Sunday, because this was a close one, man.
Do you think we walk away from this game? Do you think people walk away from this game thinking, oh, yeah, those two teams are legit, and that could potentially be a Super Bowl matchup down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. I do believe both teams will walk out of this with, good vibes and feeling like they have things going the right way, even if the scoreboard doesn't end up the right way at the end.
These two teams are great. I'm really excited for this game. Thank you for the time. Enjoy Green Bay. Enjoy the game. And anytime the Packers and the Texans intersect, it's a pleasure to connect and have you on, Cody. Thank you.
Always a blast to be on with you, man. Anytime.
Cody Stoots, Houston Football. Follow him on Twitter and follow his work. The coverage on YouTube I was perusing today. Comprehensive is an understatement. Interviews with players and coverage from the facility and everything you could possibly need as a Texans fan, but also to see the opponent as we get ready for this game on Sunday. So you can find it on YouTube and follow him on Twitter as well, at Cody Stoots. We'll come back, wrap up the Wisco Sports Show for the week next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Not only going out to Wisconsin and the great Midwest, we're going around the world tonight, Parrothead.
Wisco Sports Show final segment. Fins up. It's Friday. Big thanks to Cody Stoots, Houston Football, for coming on, giving us the latest on the Texans. Love that guy. Football people rule. They're just the best people. Caller's been sitting on hold, and I only have 60 seconds to give you, but I want you a chance to get on. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
You know who it is.
Who is it? Is this Simpson?
You know, yes.
You can't just begin every call like that. Well, I guess you can. I guess I know it's you now. What's up?
Well, I feel like you let that guy talk way too much.
He's the guest. All you want from me.
What? That dude talked so much, and he didn't say anything.
He's a guest. It's his job to talk. He's bringing us the information about the Texans.
Blah. It's terrible.
Is that all you called in to say? You sat on hold the entire time. You called before. So what were you going to say?
I'm just going to say go Celtics, and you stink, and I hate your mustache, and I love you, Grant Bills.
Thank you, Simpson. Rock Mornings, I join Simpson's show every week. He sat on hold for like 20 minutes to say that. If I'd have known it was you, Simpson, I wouldn't have worried about giving you airtime. I said, you can call in and trash me in the show another time. Thank you. Everyone have a great weekend. I'm feeling good about Packers-Texans, but Cody's point about turnovers is a good one. If both off seasons, if both offenses are humming, it might take one mistake, and, well, Jordan Love is willing to let it hang up there. But then again, maybe he lets it hang up there, and that's the difference between the Packers winning 42-35. They get some good luck. Who knows? Enjoy the weekend. Talk to you Monday.
Thank you all very much. You sure make a bar from this.